Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little different today. Usually we take a stack of articles, maybe a new book, and we cast a really wide net.
Right. We look for the big picture.
Yeah, the big trends, the macroeconomics, the shifting geopolitical plates. But today, the research you've sent over is focused on something uh, microscopically small. We are zooming in on a single word.
It creates a fascinating contrast, doesn't it? We usually think history is shaped by the loud stuff,
Oh, for sure.
the manifestos, the wars, the 10-year strategic roadmaps. But the argument in these sources is that if you actually look at the sort of source code of human transformation, pivotal moments, the ones that actually change the trajectory of a life or even a nation, they hinge on a whisper.
And a very specific whisper at that. The sources claim there's a formative sequence to how things change. And frankly, I read through this, and my immediate reaction was just resistance.
I can see that.
Because the sequence is
Yeah.
availability first, direction second.
Which goes against every single survival instinct we have.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how we operate in the modern world.
Yeah.
If I'm at work and my boss says, I have a project for you, my first question is, what is it?
Of course.
I want the scope, I want the timeline, I want the risk assessment. I need to see the roadmap before I agree to get in the car. But this material is arguing that in the realm of deep growth or spiritual change, that instinct is actually a liability.
That's the core tension we have to sit with today. We're obsessed with cognitive closure. We want the loop closed before we even start.
Right.
But the thesis here is that the demand for absolute clarity is actually a form of control that blocks the very transformation we say we want.
So let's talk about the word that breaks this cycle. The word is Hineni. It's Hebrew. Now, if I pull up a standard translation app, it tells me this means, here I am. And I have to say, that feels underwhelming. Here I am is what I say when the barista yells my name for a latte.
Yeah.
So what I used to say in homeroom so it wouldn't get detention.
Yeah.
It just sounds so passive, like I'm just confirming my GPS coordinates.
And that is exactly why that translation is so dangerous. If we leave it at here I am, we miss the violence of the word. And I don't mean violence in a destructive sense.
You mean disruptive?
Disruptive, exactly. In Hebrew, language is often described as performative.
Meaning the word doesn't just describe reality, it actually changes it.
Precisely. Think about the difference between a student mumbling present in class versus a soldier on a battlefield stepping forward when the commander asks for a volunteer for a suicide mission. The soldier might say, reporting for duty.
Okay, yeah.
The words are similar, but the stance is entirely different.
One is just your location, the other is your submission.
It's even more than submission, it's a total offering. The root of the word, hen, ties into favor and grace, but hineni acts as a threshold. It is an existential stance. It's not, I am located in this room. It's, I am fully present, my attention is locked on you, and I am ready to execute whatever command comes next.
Even though I don't know what it is yet. That's the terrifying part.
That's it.
It's like writing a blank check with your will.
And that is why it is the threshold. You're standing on the edge of the known world, looking into the unknown. And instead of asking for a map, you offer yourself as the vehicle. The paradox the text highlights is that readiness has to precede understanding.
Which is, well, it's irrational.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If you do that in business, you go bankrupt. If you do that in a relationship, you get taken advantage of. But the source material backs this up with case studies that are hard to argue with. These aren't minor anecdotes. These are pillars of ancient history.
And they all follow a pattern. The text calls them threshold moments. You have a divine initiation, you have immense human tension, usually fear or confusion,
Right.
and then you have the decision point, the moment the word is spoken.
Let's start with the heavy hitter, Abraham, Genesis 22. This story always bothers people, and it should. He's told to take his son Isaac up Mount Moriah and sacrifice him.
It's the ultimate crisis. It contradicts everything Abraham knows about ethics, about love, and even about the promises he was given earlier, that this son was the future.
Right. From a logical standpoint, this is a psychotic break. If I'm Abraham, I'm stalling, I'm asking for clarification. Are you sure? Can we review the terms? Is there a plan B? But the text highlights that he doesn't negotiate.
He says Hineni, and we have to really imagine the atmosphere here. It's not a sterile room. It's a jagged mountain slope. There's silence. The source material emphasizes this wasn't some cheerful yes.
Oh.
It was a heavy, trembling offering of presence in the face of absolute darkness.
And the kicker is the timing. The provision, the ram in the thicket that stops the sacrifice, it doesn't show up at the bottom of the mountain.
No. And that's the formative sequence again. The solution only becomes visible after the posture availability is fully enacted. If Abraham had waited for the why or the how before he started walking, the event never would have happened. His obedience literally unlocked the provision.
So it implies that the answer is hidden inside the risk, which is a tough pill to swallow. But let's look at a different flavor of this. Moses. Exodus 3, the burning bush. Now, Abraham was the patriarch, the man of faith. Moses, at this point in the story, is a complete disaster.
He's a fugitive. He's wanted for murder in Egypt. He's been hiding in the desert for 40 years herding sheep. He has a speech impediment. He has zero political clout. I mean, he is the definition of unqualified.
So he sees this bush burning, but not consuming itself, which is just a weird visual hook, and a voice calls his name. Now, if I'm Moses, I'm probably assuming the police have finally found me. I'm not thinking divine appointment. I'm thinking I'm in trouble.
The text says he was afraid to look at God. He hid his face, but his verbal response was, Hineni. And this is so crucial for you, the listener, who thinks, I can't be used for anything big because I'm a mess. Moses wasn't equipped. He wasn't confident. He was terrified.
But he was available.
That was the only prerequisite. God didn't need a polished CEO or some charismatic speaker. He just needed a conduit. The equipping, the staff turning into a snake, the plagues, the leadership skills, all of that came after the Hineni.
So the posture draws the power. You don't get the power to prepare for the posture.
Exactly. You don't get into shape to go to the gym. You go to the gym to get into shape. Hineni is stepping onto the treadmill.
Then you have Samuel. This one is interesting because he's just a kid for Samuel 3. He's living in the temple, sleeping, and he hears a voice. He thinks it's his boss, Eli.
It's almost a comedy of errors at first. He keeps running into Eli's room. You called. No, go back to sleep. It happens 3 times. This highlights something important. We often mistake a divine call for just noise.
Or circumstances.
Right.
Or other people. We think it's just the plumbing rattling.
Right. We don't have a category for it. Eli eventually realizes what's happening, and he gives him the instruction. He tells him to say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. It's that combination of brevity and attentiveness.
It's the silence that strikes me there. Samuel doesn't give a speech. He doesn't promise to build some great ministry. He essentially just says, I have an open ear.
And that shift from confusion to attentive listening activated his entire prophetic destiny. He couldn't receive the message until he adopted the posture.
And then the final historical example, which might be the most intense one, Mary, Luke 1. We view this through the lens of Christmas cards, gold halos, soft lighting. But the reality was so gritty. She's a teenager in a shame-based culture.
And she's being told she's going to become pregnant outside of wedlock. In the first century, that isn't just a scandal, it's a death sentence. Or at the very least, total social exile. Her life as she knew it was over the moment she said yes.
She does ask how, but it's a practical question, not a negotiation. And then she drops the line, Behold, I am the servant of the Lord.
That's the Greek equivalent of Hineni. It's consent, surrender. The source makes a massive theological point here. The incarnation God entering human history was dependent on human consent. Her availability was the hinge upon which all of history swung.
Hinge is a great word for it. It brings us to the next section of the research, which is the ripple effect. Because I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, cool stories. But I'm not being asked to sacrifice my kid or birth a Messiah. I'm just trying to get through a Tuesday.
And that's where we get it wrong. We wait for the cinematic music to start swelling in the background, but the text argues that small words act as spiritual hinges in everyday life. A hinge is a tiny mechanism, maybe 3 inches tall, but it swings a massive door.
So a private moment of readiness can have massive public consequences.
Look at the mechanics of it. Abraham's Hineni was private, just him and his son on a rock. But it led to a covenant of nations. Mary's was in a quiet room, but the ripple went out forever.
The source notes gave some modern examples that help ground this. The story of the school teacher really stood out to me because it just sounded so exhausting.
It was. This teacher felt a nudge to mentor students who were falling behind, but to do it outside of contract hours? Now look at the data. She was already overworked, underpaid. She had zero budget for this program.
If she had waited for a grant or a lighter schedule or for permission, she never would have done it.
Never. But she said Hineni. She said, I'm available even though I'm tired. She started meeting them. And the ripple. The students' performance improved so drastically that the administration took notice. Other teachers joined in. Eventually, they got the funding. The resources followed the availability.
But she had to front-load the cost. That's the hard part.
Always. There is always a cost up front.
There was also the entrepreneur example. This one was all about integrity.
Right. A business owner sees a shortcut, a way to inflate the numbers or cut a corner that would result in a massive immediate cash injection no one would probably ever know. The logical survivalist brain says, take the money.
But he has a Hineni moment. Here I am, standing for something else.
And he takes the hit, he loses the quick cash. It feels like a loss. But the ripple was reputation. Over the next decade, that integrity became his brand. Clients trusted him with projects they wouldn't give to anyone else because they knew he was unbribable. His "here I am" to his values created a marketplace influence he couldn't have bought with marketing.
This brings us to the psychology of why we resist this so hard. The text calls it the trap of clarity.
We are addicted to clarity because we think clarity equals safety. We think,
yeah.
if I know the outcome, I can't be hurt.
It's fear of failure just masked as due diligence.
Exactly. We overanalyze. We call it planning, but so often it's just procrastination wearing a suit. The source material argues that trust is a muscle that only grows in motion. You cannot learn to trust God or even trust your own gut while sitting safely on the couch analyzing the data.
Action before insight. The source actually says understanding is derivative of action. You obey to understand.
Think about it like learning a language. You can study the grammar books for 10 years, but until you stand in the market and try to speak, risking looking like an idiot, you will never actually speak the language. The awkwardness of the attempt is the gateway to fluency.
But that vulnerability is brutal. Hineni is basically saying, I am open to being wounded.
It is. It's extreme exposure. It's saying, I am not the one in charge here. And for the modern ego, which has been trained to curate its image and control its environment, that is a kind of death.
So let's get practical. If I want to stop being a control freak and start operating this way, how do I do it? The source offers a spiritual inventory. And I have to say, looking at this list, it is not a comfortable exercise.
It's not meant to be. The first step is identifying partial presence.
Which hit me hard.
It asks, where are you physically present but spiritually unavailable?
That's the dinner table where I'm physically eating, but my mind is solving a crisis at work. Or I'm scrolling on my phone under the table.
Right. You are located there, but you are not Hineni. You are not at the disposal of your family or your friends. You've held back your attention. So step one is admitting where you are ghosting your own life.
And step two.
Recognize. Hesitation. Look for the fear. Where are you delaying a decision not because you need more info, but because you're scared of the outcome?
That difficult conversation you've been putting off for 6 months.
Exactly. That delay is a refusal to say Hineni. You are hiding in the bushes like Moses.
The source also suggests a morning declaration.
This is a simple habit, but it rewires the brain. Before the dopamine hit of the phone, before the news, you wake up and just say, here I am.
It sounds a bit woo-woo, but I get the logic. You're setting the toggle switch to on before the world starts making demands on you.
You're moving from defense to offense. Instead of just reacting to the first email that hits you, you are establishing a posture of readiness. I'm ready for what this day holds.
And then there's the next action filter for all the to-do list lovers out there.
Look at your list. Most of it is just maintenance. But ask yourself, which item on this list is a threshold? Which item requires courage? That is where you apply Hineni. Maybe it's submitting that application. Maybe it's finally apologizing to someone.
And the idea of micro-Hineni steps.
We don't start with Mount Moriah. You don't start with the biggest risk of your life. You practice on small things. You practice being fully present with the cashier at the grocery store. You practice saying yes to a small request for help. You build the muscle memory of availability so that when the burning bush moment comes, you don't freeze.
It's training.
It is. And you have to track the results. Journaling isn't just for teenagers. It's data collection. You need to prove to your skeptical brain that when you took a risk and made yourself available, the world didn't end. In fact, something new opened up.
You're building a case study of your own life.
That's how real confidence is built, not by thinking, but by evidence of past provision.
So, as we wrap this up, we've gone from ancient linguistics to modern psychological barriers. The red thread through all of it is this shift from, do I understand, to, am I available?
That's the summary. Hineni is the bridge.
My takeaway, and maybe the thing I'm going to struggle with the most, is that the extraordinary starts with the mundane. I want the fireworks, I want the burning bush, but the spark is usually just a quiet nudge.
And you don't need the burning bush. You just need to stop waiting for perfect conditions.
The source leaves us with a question that I think is going to haunt me a bit this week.
It's the question that cuts through all the noise.
What is it?
Which decisions are you currently postponing while waiting for clarity that may never come?
That's heavy.
And the follow-up. What if the clarity you are looking for is found only after you say the word?
We're standing at the threshold waiting for the map, but the map is hidden inside the first step.
The quiet word changes everything, but only if you speak it.
Hineni, here I am. It's a risky way to live, but it seems like it might be the only way to really live. Thanks for unpacking this with us. I'm going to go try and be fully present for my lunch break now.
Start small.
We'll see you next deep dive. Take care.